Welcome to Guest of the Year. I'm the host. My name's Mike. This week we're playing a team format. Here's how the game works. I play a song for a team of 3 comprised of former Guest of the Year contestants. After the song concludes, they will discuss and ultimately submit a single guess of the live track's year. However many years off they are is their team's score for that round. If they nail the year exactly, they get 0 points. If they're 1 year off, they get 1 point, and so on. After 5 songs, however many years off they were in total is their team's score for the game. On the next episode, I'll play the same 5 live tracks for another team of 3. Whichever team has the lower score wins a prize pack of Guest of the Year shirts. Unlike the main tournament, where the winner stays on, these are one-off matches. We'll meet the Deadheads in a moment, but first, without further ado, the Grateful Dead.
ABC, we all think of try to live in love.
Smego is 40 from West Branch, Michigan. He's from episodes 11 and 12. He won episode 11. Welcome back, Smego. What are your first thoughts on that track?
Well, my first thought was when Jerry came in, he sounded a little hoarse, and it sounded like he maybe smoothed out. But I was waiting for some background vocals from anybody else, and I don't feel like I got any of that. I don't know. I think it's the 80s.
Sounds good. Murph is 47 from Columbus, Ohio. He won episode 19 and appeared in episodes 19 and 20. Murph, can you narrow it down from the 80s if we're going with the 80s there?
Well, I don't know how confidently I could do it, but similar. I was like waiting to confirm my suspicion that was Brent. But I honestly, if it turned out to be Vince, I wouldn't be terribly shocking. But I'm still leaning towards those keyboards being Brent. I heard a little bit of organ, and it sounded more like Brent. I also feel like I heard a little sound effect. Did you guys hear that? Like the kind of thing that they did during Hell in a Bucket. I could be way off there, but that to me would say like 87 or 88. So I guess I would be leaning towards kind of that 87, 88 range, but I could certainly be convinced to go maybe a little later. I don't know that I don't know. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay, Geov is 52 from Columbia, South Carolina. He was in episode 21. Geov, do you have any convincing to do of Murph?
I will just right out of the gate. My guess is it's an 87. And I definitely could hear Brent. The way that the recording sounded, there used to be I had some FM broadcast bootlegs from 87. There's one in particular for Brendan Byrne Arena 87, the March Fall Spring Tour, that this sounds a lot like. Okay, I'm not saying it is at all, because it's freaking touch of gray. It's hard to tell, but and also Bob's guitar to me always had a very metallic sound. anyway, to me, it sounded like an 87 version of Touch of Grey. But I definitely don't think it was Vince. Could be later than 87. Definitely wasn't one of those early, like, like when it first came out, it definitely wasn't that.
I agree. It sounded more kind of.
Yeah, it was like a circus song when it came out. I just think of that Brent sound from the early 80s. It's like.
So, Smego, how are you feeling about Geov and Murph's input?
I definitely don't think it's one of those early Touch of Grey versions. I would be comfortable with 87.
Same.
That's what I thought it was all along. So I could be convinced to move it a year or two, but that's as far as I would be willing to move.
It's best to play it safe. I don't think it's before 87.
Does anyone object to 87, or do you want to put that through?
Let's put it through.
Lock that shit in.
All right. It was Touch of Grey at Henry J. Kaiser Convention Center in Oakland, California on March 16th, 1988.
88, fuck.
That's pretty good.
Nice work. Yeah,
right.
That's all you can do.
Good.
Geov, you're shaking your head. Do you feel like you missed something?
No.
Okay.
One of these dudes that said 88, I wouldn't have argued with that. Those are really similar years. It just sounded like the atmosphere of the tape.
That's where a lot of my intuitions in this whole game comes from, is just the sound of the recording.
Yeah, and I don't think there's much distinction really, like, to me, audibly between those 2 years. They're pretty similar in my mind, and I think you get the same kind of atmospherics and for the most part the same equipment, and there's not a big distinction in people's voices. So we can just think of 87 and 88 as one big mega year, and we'll just say, we did as well as we could.
Yeah, Murph, you put the range at 87 to 88. Why didn't you stretch it to 89 or as early as 86?
I feel like they made in my mind, a real leap forward in 89 and 90. I feel like there's they're playing with more self-assurance and confidence. And I feel like Jerry's voice is getting better into 89 and definitely, especially 90.
And the recordings are better.
And the recordings are better for sure. And so to me, this didn't feel like it was quite there yet. So I was thinking 87 or 88. And I want to listen to that back. But when I heard what I thought was that like sound effect type thing, I thought they were doing that sort of thing. I think that's like a Dan Healy thing that he was doing more and more in like 87. But he probably was doing some of that into 88 until Bobby was like, okay, you need to stop doing that.
And why not 86?
Jerry sounds like Fozzie Bear in 1986.
Yeah.
He's got this unmistakable sound in his voice.
Well, Smego, we were talking before, and you said that after being in the Dead forever, you got into Fish in 2021. How did that happen?
Vehemently being anti-Fish. Well, we were talking a little bit before, but it was just that post-pandemic, having a phone in my hand, and seeing the first and second set previews from Dead and Company and Fish, and I really wasn't liking what I was hearing from Dead and Company, and I still didn't really like these Fish songs, but as soon as they got into the jam, I was really feeling it. And one of my best friends in high school who turned me on to the Dead, who Fish is his favorite band, and I always told him I would never go to a show with him, so stop asking me to. I called him up and I said, "Hey man, he lives in the mountains," and he flew out and we went.
Sick. So you guys have 1 point. Great work. And let's play the second song.
Uncle John's hand to the time. We'll go alone. He's come to take his children home.
was spacing out in that Jerry solo for a minute.
So, Murph, what are your thoughts there?
Well, I think I only heard one drummer. I mean, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I was trying to listen for Donna, and honestly, I don't know if I ever really heard her. But there's always those kind of one-off shows where it's like, oh, she wasn't there because she was, having a baby or something here and there. So I'm thinking like pre-hiatus. To me, Phil's vocals were kind of, nicely kind of up in the mix in that way that I associate with like 73, 74. But that wild card of not hearing Donna has me a little bit like questioning everything. I mean, I guess if I had to put like a range on it, I'd say, I don't know, 72, 73, 74, but I don't know, it's tricky.
Smego, you famously said that Phil's singing peaked in 2010. Where do you put Phil's singing there? Are you able to narrow it down?
No, I mean, not narrow it down. I was trying to listen for the drummer aspect there, if there was one or two, and I was having a hard time with that. Immediately, I was thinking 1970. That was like the first thing that I thought. I don't know. I'm a little stumped myself.
Geov, can you unstump your teammates?
I'm hesitant to be very forceful with my opinion this time because I was wrong last time, but close. I agree that I think it is one drummer. So I think if all of us kind of think that, I think that is, although it was hard. The God's honest truth is the very beginning, I thought you were playing like another 80s thing. And it took me a minute to kind of orient because it was real heavy jamming and I couldn't hear the keyboard almost at all. And then eventually I could hear some soft sounding or low in the mix, maybe piano. I never heard Donna either.
Yeah, so 71 maybe. I don't know.
For me, he's only plays in a few 71 shows.
Right.
I actually listened in the last couple of days. There was a show that Mike did a couple weeks ago where the guy played a late one of those Keith right at the beginning. And his piano to me in those shows sounds like an old out of tune like saloon piano. And he's playing a weird, it didn't sound like that. And those are very distinct. Everybody on that show was wrong. I knew that one right dead on it because of the unusual piano. And I think the rest of them just hadn't listened to those shows. There's only a couple months. It's like didn't come in like, what are you guys from?
October of 71, isn't it?
Yeah, it was like right there. There's that famous Hill
Chicago
Auditorium 71 show. Yeah. That was, I think it was like a Dick's Picks maybe. Days. Anyway, I don't think it was 71. I was thinking 73, but that's kind of my safe landing zone in there. If we're wrong, we'll only be wrong by a little bit.
Yeah, and I wonder, I kind of agree with you on the piano because I did hear piano in there and it sounded like pretty consistent with Keith's, playing on a decent day, although it was kind of quiet.
Wow.
It didn't have that like I get what you're saying. I don't know that I've ever heard it articulated like that, but I agree with you. Those are real early shows with Keith sound the piano sounds like a carnival or something. So I wonder if the fact that we didn't hear Donna, there's that Dick's Picks Volume 1 from December of 73 where she's not there because she was giving birth supposedly. But I mean, I imagine she probably missed a bunch of shows maybe around that same time. So
it was it was only a couple weeks, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering if maybe Geov, your sense that 73 would be like a safe pick. That's kind of what I'm leaning towards too, but that was a tough one.
I'd also go with that because I mean there's clearly no Donna, but she wasn't always brought in at every song in the beginning. That's kind of why I was thinking 71 because she was only in on a couple songs back then.
Murph, yeah, we started with you. I guess we'll circle back. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking 73 because, and kind of like Smego was saying, even if it's, I think we've talked ourselves out of 71, and even if it's 72, we're only one, we're getting a 1 point, and if it's 74, we're getting a 1 point. I feel like 73 is kind of a safe pick, and to me, it didn't sound. I mean, it definitely didn't sound like Europe 72, but the fall shows sound a lot different than spring, so I can see it potentially being 72. So I don't know. I would be leaning towards 73 just to, in my mind, play it a little safer.
Works for me.
Geov, you in on that?
Yeah, lock it in.
Okay. Uncle John's Band at Oklahoma City Music Hall on November 14th, 1972.
That same, you listen to my show when it's the one with what was the photographer dude's name?
Blakesburg?
Jay Blakesburg.
Yeah, Blakesburg. But he did the same thing. He played a 72 that was late like that, and it did not sound like Europe 72, and I got it wrong there as well.
You know, and I was thinking too, I was like, I could be 72 because I'm really familiar with the Europe 72 sound, but not so much anything that happened stateside that year for one reason or another.
Only 1 year off, 2 total points. So, Murph, you are in guest year canon for being the guy who took down Todd, who you're going up against right now.
Right.
After you took down Todd, what was like the reception like in your town? Was there a parade? Was there?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if you guys know this, but James Buster Douglas is from Columbus, Ohio. And so I'd say it was pretty similar to when he beat Mike Tyson. There was a big parade. My posters or my picture's still on a few billboards around town. So yeah, it's pretty, I got quite the recognition.
Well deserved. So we're talking before, and Smego brought up a random Dead & Co show, and you knew it off the bat. Or do you go back and listen to Dead & Co on Nugs or something, or what's your relationship like with the band?
So I'm a sicko. I mean, I subscribe to Nugs. I listen to basically every show. I mean, I'm just like, I have a problem. And so what I do is I'll make my summer tour highlights playlist on Nugs. And then I saw that they did just drop a bunch of shows on the like more mainstream streaming services. So I did make like a Spotify best of summer 22 playlist, and it's set up like, you know, a composite first set and a composite second set. And then I had so much fun making that I made a volume 2. But yeah, I listen to a lot of Dead & Co, and it can be frustrating because I feel like some tours are wildly better than others. And for a while I just thought it was like a steady decline, but summer last year totally proved me wrong on that. I think the summer tour last year was really good.
When you listen to Dead & Co, what are you listening for?
Well, I'm listening for just kind of an energy, and that doesn't, to me, I know a lot of people complain about the tempo, and so it's not necessarily a tempo thing. It's just sort of an energy, and they can play songs at a slower tempo, but if you have that sense that there's like a little bit of I don't know, a little bit of bounce and energy, even if it's at a slower tempo, I'm hooked in. And you can never give up on Dead & Co because they can start a song and it can, you know, at the start it can just be sort of sort of dead, but by the end they can have it cooking on all cylinders. And I feel like a great example of that and many times is Jack Straw. Like a lot of times they'll start Jack Straw and you'll be like, oh my gosh, is this ever going to get off the ground? And then by the end it's like, holy cow, this is like amazing. And so to me, it's just, I don't know, it's the interplay. It's, there's some nights where you can tell that they're all listening to each other. Bobby's playing well off of John, and there's some nights or some songs where it's just like, okay, Bobby's guitar is like way too high in the mix, and he's playing those funky guitars that just sound, a lot of times they just don't sound
shrill.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there are other nights where it's like, oh God, he's knows what he's doing. He's playing like this counterpoint stuff, and John's like weaving in and out. And I gotta say, I was bummed when Kreutzmann missed a few of those shows last summer due to what, then was health problems, and now he's sitting out this whole tour, which it sounds like is more kind of the, quote, creative differences. Yeah. But when Jay Lane stepped in, I thought he did an awesome job. And honestly, I thought they sounded just as good, if not better, to be honest. No slight against Kreutzmann. I would prefer to have him in that slot. I'm not talking smack about him, but for whatever reason, I think some of the shows that I liked the most last summer were Jay Lane shows.
Awesome. Well, you guys are in a good position. 2 points after 2 songs. Let's play the third song.
One more time to tell how this is the season of what inside at Westwood, hallelujah, hallelujah. Time of returning, fortune's polish and gleaming. I'm not walking on a jingle bell rainbow. Time fast leaving the trail and relinquish the rain. I've been riding with fingers of gold. Now is the dance I'm waiting for. Rise with the night. What's gonna take love?
Wow. Sweet.
Jev, what are your thoughts?
Definitely Primal Dead. I'm very confident in suggesting that. The keys is what I was really, the beginning, you could really not hear any. I was convinced it was definitely Pigpen. And then there was that period when they kind of, the band laid back and somebody was getting down on the keys. And I still want to say that was Pig and not TC. But I could be convinced otherwise. That was unusual key action that came in that really has me thrown for a loop. If we can convince ourselves it's not TC, it's probably 68 or 67. And if that was TC, then it's probably more 68, 69. I don't think it was 70. I think that's too late. And I don't think it was those 66 tapes sound like they're really raw. This is a little, they're getting into the heavy jams at this point. The acid has taken hold.
How many drummers did you hear?
2 for sure.
Yeah, I think 2 for sure.
So what does that tell you, Murph?
Well, I totally agree with everything Jev said, although I think I'm a little more definitive in my mind that it was Pigpen. That organ sound, that kind of swirling organ sound at the end sounded pretty rudimentary in a way. I think TC probably would have been doing something a little bit different there. The other thing that also kind of has me, that's just sort of a something to hang my hat on, is Jerry's vocal still had traces of that like really early Jerry sound where he didn't quite sound himself yet. He was like putting on this, like, I think I mentioned this in another episode, that he had, these guys were all kind of like jug band folk singers at first. And I feel like you had a little bit of that remnants of him like trying to sound like a folk singer, the way you maybe hear in like 68, maybe going earlier, but my gut is telling me 68.
Smego, you're nodding along.
Yeah, I think that was Pig as well. I could be wrong on this, but I think TC played mostly piano, keyboard. I don't think he played hit on the organ. Could be wrong, but the vocals was Jerry's vocal. I was thinking more 67. So 67 or 67 or 68, could be 69. I would definitely narrow it down within those 3. So, I mean, I guess 68 would be right in the middle of those.
Yeah, I heard only organ as well. It just, I don't.
TC's real hard to hear.
Yeah, but it just more. I don't remember listening to a lot of old shows where Pigpen does any kind of soloing on the organ. That's what kind of threw me. It would seem like they were really, to me, he either was up there singing the blues, playing the harmonica, or he was just kind of adding color, if is a way of putting it, and not take it. It just there was a little bit of a solo there, which threw me off. But if we eliminate TC, I'm 67, 68 all the way. Yeah, I think I'm wigging myself out by the extended key jam.
Well, it was unusual for sure. I think it was Pigpen, but I also think it was unusual in the sense that it was more prominent than you normally hear from Pigpen. So that's maybe what we're struggling with.
It could be just the mix. You know what I'm saying? If you were there,
Yeah.
maybe it didn't sound like that. But
And,
what we're hearing
and that's what I think. I mean, that's pretty common for the 11, I think. And I don't listen to a lot. I really don't. But we're right in there. I think 68 is the safe bet.
I'd be ready to lock that in.
I've got no issue with that.
Okay. It was the 11 at Carousel Ballroom in San Francisco on February 14th, 1968.
Epic show. That's a classic.
Nice work, fellas.
Did you just find that on the archive, or is that on a specific?
That's at Road Trips.
Yeah, that was Road Trips Volume 2.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Geov, so you're a Widespread Panic fan. For those who don't listen to Widespread Panic, what's the sales pitch? That if you're talking to a deadhead, of course, what's the sales pitch?
Well, it for me, I said this on the first show when I was here, that I was a metal guy before I became Into the Dead. Okay. And what I like to see the most live is somebody who can absolutely rip the guitar. Okay. If you can't rip the guitar, then I'm probably not going to be a huge fan of yours. Okay. And Panic is one of those bands that brings it all songs, every song. And I think that most people's criticism with that is that they don't do like the heavy Dark Star jams or the Playing Jam or whatever. If you're a Fish fan, it's all, they call it type 1 and type 2 jamming. Panic is all type 1 jam. I'm okay with that. Okay. I love that. I don't care that they don't do it any other way. To me, it's awesome. You talk about people going to Fish tour. It's like, this is the warm-up show. The first 2 or 3 shows are warm-up shows. You need to catch them later. Panic needs no warm-up show. They need a sound check, and then they are on.
And you probably see a lot of like Dead shirts at these shows too, right?
Oh yeah, what really the vibe. If you see them in the South, and again, they're a Southern band, and they play most of their shows in the South, and the rest of you guys may have never even seen anything like that. It's basically a grown-up kind of hippie frat boy, heavy drinking crowd.
I mean, we're all like that, aren't we?
I'm just saying, they like everywhere they go, you ask the venue who sold more alcohol than anyone else, it's Panic. Okay, they friggin' people go there, and the fans are super nice and very welcoming. There's no gatekeeping that I've ever seen in the Panic community, which is definitely a thing in the Dead community and the Fish community. Absolutely.
What's worse, Fish or Dead in gatekeeping?
For gatekeeping, Fish, I think, is the most hardcore, geeky gatekeeping scene.
Try to get in the front row in that pit.
That's actually a prime example. I live in Columbia, and there's this little venue called the Township here. It holds like 3,500 or something. And I've been on the rail at the Township many times, and you can leave, go to the bathroom, and just roll right back. No one's pushing and shoving, and where the fuck are you going from? It's just you just right back there, and not many shows are going to let you do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it truly. I brought my son, who's now 21. He's been to quite a few Panic shows. Even when he was young, we would get down there in the front, and people were always really cool and not, it wasn't sketchy or good crowd.
Great. I'm sold. So you guys have 2 points heading into the 4th of 5 songs. So you're setting a mean pace for Todd, Joshua, and Jonathan. Let's play the 4th song.
Moving off of Virginia, California on my mind.
Okay, who has a thought?
Guys trying to hear keys. I didn't hear many keys. And Smego, I know you have.
I did not hear.
hard
I didn't
time.
hear any keys, and I think was that 2 drummers, boys.
I thought it was one.
See, and I was having a hard time with if it was 1 or 2 drummers. Well, if it's 1 drummer and you guys can confirm that, then I'd say 73, 74.
Something about the vocal tone, to me, sounded like that those fall of '74 shows. It didn't quite have the those soundboards they released, or not even soundboards, but like the Grateful Dead movie sound, and that box set they did has that like crowd noise pumped in. It obviously didn't have that, but something about that vocal tone.
Jerry's guitar though sounded like the Bean to me.
Yeah,
Just a feeling. But yeah, if it's just 1 drummer,
what do you think drummer wise, Gev?
If I had to guess, I would say it was 1. I missed a thing on my thing as well where it was 2, but it was a ballad. And it's much harder to pick up 2 drummers on a ballad. I'm pretty confident it was 1, but I was way all over the place. It's definitely not Brent era. I mean, I don't think we can wipe that out. It's not the Pigpen era. It's in there, but could it be a 76 if there was 2? Maybe. I also thought I picked up on some of that funky vocal sound that's common in the 74s. Man, that was a toughie. No Donna, no nothing and I couldn't hear any keys if they were there.
No keys and no Donna for sure. But I think 74 is a good bet just to play it safe if it happens to be 76.
That's what my gut is telling me. I mean, if I were playing the solo show, I'd be 74 all the way.
I would also submit 74 if that was me alone.
Lock it in.
Okay. It was Promised Land at Tower Theater in Upper Darby, Pennsylvania on
76.
June 24th, 1976.
Damn. You were right about the Bean, Smego.
Yeah, man. I heard the Bean, dude. I heard the Bean. And as soon as he said Tower Theater, I was like, ah.
I knew we were fucked.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, man. It's exactly what happened to me the last time is I couldn't hear the 2. And then there was another episode I listened to a couple of days ago that the same thing. Somebody played a 76 and several of the contestants guessed 74 because they only hear 1 drummer.
It was maybe a set closer, and Mickey already walked off the stage to go, do whatever he did, set break or something.
I heard that in those early 76 shows, Billy was trying to play real loud because he didn't want Mickey back there.
In his book, he admitted that he was not happy that they invited Mickey back, that he was happy being 1 drummer.
Okay, well, you guys are up to 4 points. Still a very good spot to be. A little less wiggle room, but you're looking good heading into the fifth song. Last song. Let's hear it.
Well, the joint was jumping, going round and round. And I beat it in market for a crazy sound. I know they never start rocking till the moon went down. Though the sound is so sweet, I had to take a chance. I rose out of my seat, 'cause I had to dance. And started moving my feet. Oh yes, and clapping my hands. But no rhythm, I start rocking. Going round and round. Hey, I read it and rocking. What a crazy sound. And no, we'll never stop rocking till the moon went down.
All right. Any inklings?
I mean, at first it was smooth sound, and slowed down a little bit. I was thinking maybe this was late '90s by Bob's vocal, but by the end there, I'm not convinced that it wasn't the early '80s. What about you guys?
I'm definitely going more early '80s on that, just
Yeah.
on the vocal. I kind of going back to that, the kind of Bobby mannerisms. I feel like I picked up a little bit of those sort of mannerisms that I think are kind of characteristic of early '80s. And I also feel like for the most part, Brent was playing the Hammond, but I think he was switching over to a little bit of that kind of plinky
Mm-hmm.
earlier '80s keyboard sound, not super heavy on it, more Hammond than that plinky stuff, but it was definitely giving me early '80s vibes.
Yeah, by the end there, I knew it was the early '80s. But the tempo of it and just everything, and the crystal clear vocals and recording, But there is good recordings in the early '80s.
Jeff, what are you thinking?
I would suggest that it was no later than '82 to me. It had the guitars, both Bobby's and Jerry's guitar had a sound that reminds me of 82, 81, 80. I don't think it gets later than that. Brent definitely had those jangly, whatever you want to call it, the little plinky keys that came in towards the end that I think were, by the time I was seeing the Dead, I first saw him in '88. That was gone. Okay, that he was not doing that. Okay, so if you hear that at all, it's much earlier, and it just didn't have that sound of those the real Coke years of the late mid '80s. It was really nice jam.
Yeah, I liked that. Yeah, I was thinking 80, 81.
Easily could be that. One of the things that people have talked about in a lot of shows, the real Super 79 and early 80, Brent's keys typically are a lot louder. This one, he seemed, again, it could just be the mix, but it seemed lower in the mix. It wasn't like in your face, like those real very early recordings where some people have tricked with a 79, from like Brent's first year.
Yeah, I think that's why I would skew maybe more towards the kind of the later end of what you're saying, Jeff, and I'd lean towards like 81, 82 as opposed to 80, 81. But I keep saying what I'm leaning towards, and then I keep getting proven wrong. So
I mean, I think if we're here between 80 and 80, if we're here between 80 and 82, then 81 is the logical one to settle on.
Yeah. I wrote down 82, but I got no problem with. I'm notoriously bad with these years.
yeah, I am too. So don't listen to
more often
much
than
of what I
not,
say.
I'm off by a year or two. I'm close, but I very rarely, playing along with Mike's show, do I get these dead on.
So
81's good with me.
81, we're going with 81.
Log it in.
All right. Well, you're not that bad at it, Jeff, because it was around at Nassau on April 11th, 1982.
Jeff. Hey.
Again, what can you say, man? It sounded right. It's funny because I started collecting bootlegs like about in '86, and those early '80s ones were very difficult to get. I never had that many. I think even now, if you go look at my iTunes collection of just lots and lots of Dead, I have the least amount of shows from the early '80s. I had an Alpine Valley '82. Is it the one where the music never stops? Like it's like a
sugary and the music never stops.
Yes.
Yep.
And the recording kind of reminded me of that. That's a really good show if you never heard it, Mike.
No, I've definitely heard it.
I was talking to Mike.
Yeah, well, I'm Smego. I
Clearly
forgot I'm
you heard it.
Smego. I'm also Mike.
Yeah.
But yeah, my birthday is August 9th, actually. So Jerry died on my 13th birthday. But they played the day before I was born. They played Alpine Valley, which would become my hometown venue. I think it's kind of like a destiny thing or something.
Love it.
Sweet venue too.
Kind of going back to that, it's the Bobby guitar the way Jerry's guitar sounds. It's still the Tiger, but it sounds a little bit different in the early 80s. Like it may have been amps or something else that he was using. But it sounded a little bit different than it does in the late 80s, 90s.
Yeah, for sure.
You guys were great. That was amazing. 5 points total.
Thank God for the 0.
Yeah, that was big. That was a very good benchmark score. Nice work, guys.
Todd's going to blow us out of the water, though.
That's the first thing. When I was there the show after the guy that beat you, Murph, and that was the first thing I asked, like, which one of you motherfuckers beat the great time?
Yeah. Yeah, Jeremy, he was really good, too. And then his dad came in and beat him.
That was wild. That was
Jeremy's like, I was listening to the drums, and like that's the one thing that I never am saying that other than whether it's 1 or 2, never am I making my pick on what the drum tone was.
Right.
Never.
Well, you do not have to worry about Jeremy in the next episode or his dad, Dean, but you do have to worry about Todd, Joshua, who was the one who originally made that observation, which has now been used against him about 1979 having Brent high in the keys. And then, of course, Jonathan from episode 24. But you guys are in a good spot, 5 points. Thank you guys all so much for doing it. It's great to catch up with everyone. Okay, subscribe to Guest of the Year on Apple Podcasts and Spotify for all of our show links, including our new YouTube channel and our new TikTok. Go to guestoftheyear.net. And if you want to be a contestant on the show, sponsor the show, or make comments and ask questions, email us at info@guestoftheyear.net. Shout out to Dylan for drawing the posters. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks to the amazing tapers whose recordings made this show possible. Thank you guys all again for playing, and remember, it's all one song anyway.
And I bid you good night. Good night. Good night.